This administration has established a precedent for this country by taking this argument that any president, Republican or Democrat, can use predators in any country they wish because that is limited hostilities without Congress being involved. I'm not going to ask, I'm going to probably come to a close quicker than I wanted to because of the time, but we do have aircraft flying over Libyan airspace, do we not?
Yes, we do.
That's yes or no. And we do know that you know, there's numbers of types of weapons that they have that could in fact take down our aircraft that aren't necessarily in fixed positions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So to say that our men and women in uniform are not in a position to encounter hostilities or involved in hostilities is really pretty incredible. And you know, you cite the fact that hostilities has never been defined. I went back and read the House conference, which basically reported out the War Powers Act. As a matter of fact, they tried to make it a lesser level. They started out with armed conflict, and then they used the word hostilities, and they did so in such a manner to certainly talk about the kinds of conditions that exist today on the ground. So when you say that these are not hostilities, that's just patently not the intent of Congress when they passed the War Powers Act. Now, you've introduced something unique, a mathematical formula, and I'm sure future presidents will use a mathematical formula. In other words, if we are only doing X% of the bombing, then we're not involved in hostilities. But I find that not in any way to jive with what the House sent out in its reporting language. And I'm just going to close with this because my time's up and I know the chairman's getting impatient. I did not support your nomination. And I thought you're a very intelligent person, obviously very well learned. But I felt that you had the likelihood to subject U.S. law or to cause it to be lesser important than international law. And while I made no statement to that effect publicly, I told you that privately when we met in our office. And that's exactly what you've done. You basically said the United Nations has authorized this, and there's no need for Congress to act. And we're going to narrowly define hostilities. I would guess at night, however people of your category give high fives, you're talking to other academics about this cute argument that has been utilized. But I would say to you that I think you've undermined the credibility of this administration. I think you've undermined the integrity of the War Powers Act. And I think by taking this very narrow approach, you've done a great disservice to our country. And I do hope that at some point we will look at the War Powers Act in light of new technology, in light of new conflicts, and define it in a way that someone using these narrow and what I would call cute arguments does not have the ability to work around Congress. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Corker. I think it's important, obviously, to have these views out. I was not growing at all impatient. I'm happy to give you extra time. I think it's an important discussion. And as I think you know, Senator, I value my friendship and our relationship a lot. But I do have to tell you, based on what you just said, that your facts are just incorrect. I mean, your basic facts on which you're basing your judgment is incorrect. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
First of all, the President of the United States accepts the constitutionality of the War Powers Act and sought to live by it. No president's done that yet.
I didn't argue that, so that's not a fact.
Yeah, but it is a fact, because you come to the next point. Having done that, the President sent us a letter before the expiration of the time period. And in the letter, and I'm going to put the letter in the record, he says, "Dear Mr. Speaker and Mr. President, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, on March 21st, I reported to the Congress that the United States, pursuant to request from the Arab League and authorization by the United Nations Security Council, had acted 2 days earlier to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe by deploying U.S. forces to protect the people of Libya. He then goes on, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but then he says, thus, pursuant to our ongoing consultations, I wish to express my support for the bipartisan resolution drafted by Senators Kerry, McCain, Levin, Feinstein, Graham, Lieberman, which would confirm that the Congress supports the U.S. mission in Libya and that both branches are united in their commitment to supporting the aspirations of the Libyan people. Now, he asked us to do that before the expiration of 60 days. But we didn't do it. Don't blame the President. The Congress of the United States didn't do it. And let me tell you why, bluntly. Because both leaders in both houses were unwilling at that point in time to do it.
Yeah.
And we have to, you know, let's be honest about this.
Well, I am being very honest, and
well,
I think you're parsing
you're not
words,
being honest.
And I have the ability to express my opinion just like you do.
But about
and to use facts just like you do. If you want to get in a debate about this right now, I'm glad to do that, and I would like.
Senator, you're not letting me finish my point, which is that you're saying the President violated the process here and didn't come to the Congress. He did come to the Congress. He sent us a letter requesting us to do the authorization, and we didn't do it. That's the simple fact here. Moreover, there's a constitutional question here, because in paragraph B of the War Powers Act, it says that the President shall terminate any use of the United States Armed Forces with respect to such report was submitted unless the Congress has either declared war or has enacted a specific authorization within the 60-day period. So if Congress doesn't act, Congress can, in effect, by its lack of action, challenge the constitutional right of the President to do something. That's, in effect, a constitutional standoff. And any senator could have gone to the floor of the United States Senate with a resolution during those 60 days. No senator chose to do so. So all I'm saying is I'm not going to sit here and let everybody throw the dart at the White House saying the President violated this and that when he's the first President to ever say, I accept the constitutionality of the War Powers Act. Secondly, sent us a letter before the expiration of the time asking us to pass the authorization. And thirdly, I'll say this to you as the chairman, I went to the leaders, nobody wanted to do it. So here we are. And so, you know, the real relevant question here is whether or not, I agree with you. I think there are some serious constitutional questions about predators. How do they fit? And I think legal advisor Coe has accepted that. We need to exercise our responsibility to modernize this. But the mere fact that hostilities are taking place, and they are, doesn't per se mean United States Armed Forces have been introduced into those hostilities if they're not being shot at, if they're not at risk of being shot at, if there's no risk of escalation, if the mission is narrowly defined. So I know none of us want to get trapped in the legalese here, and we want to try to do this in the right way. But it's just wrong to suggest that somehow the President went outside the constitutional process here, when in fact Congress, us, have done nothing within those 60 days to either authorize it or declare war or not.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just respond that I think the central element of my argument to Mr. Coe, who, by the way, very much respect his intellect, I don't respect his judgment in this particular case. My argument is around the issue of hostilities. That is what the focus of my argument was. And by narrowly defining that, or being cute, where you say, I support the constitutionality of the War Powers Act, but on the other hand, since we're not really involved in hostilities, wink, wink, we really don't need to deal with Congress. That's the part. That just happened on the 15th. I don't think anybody in this body had any idea that the President would take such a narrow interpretation of hostilities. I don't think anybody knew that. I think it's been a shock to all. I think the President wishes he had handled this differently, because what's happened is, by being cute, they've introduced a whole nother debate here that shouldn't be taking place. And my guess is they might have gotten overwhelming support for a limited operation, whether I support it or not. What they've done by trying to have it both ways, which is what they did with the June 15 letter, is interjected a debate that has to do with credibility, has to do with integrity and, to me, is a great disservice to this country. So I stand by what I just said. It is factual, and I'll be glad to debate this all day long.
Well, hopefully we don't have to